Hello everyone, welcome back to Grow with Alan, episode 6 I think today. It's gorgeous mid-April, the sunshine is out, it's forecast to be 24 degrees Tuesday and Wednesday this week, which means it's perfect time for sowing some of those crops which are going to be a little bit more tender and like a little bit more warmth. So what are we going to be doing this week? First up, these are the cauliflowers and kale, which we sowed a few weeks ago. I'm going to be potting those on. I don't want to put them straight into the soil yet. I want to grow them on a little bit more. I have got some strawberry plants to get planted outside. And what have we got here to get sown? We have 2 lots of French beans. Got the climbing bean Algarve and the little dwarf bean Ferrari. And we're going to be sorting out the soil to get those things going. And a whole stack of more tender stuff. We've got squash, scallop mixed, cucumber, market more, butternut squash, a couple of varieties of courgette. So right, with that in mind, I thought it was nice to get outside the shed today for a bit because it's so lovely. We'll do a bit of potting on, shall we? Cunningly, I've got some pots nicely filled with compost, and for growing these things on, this is just ordinary potting compost actually, so the plants have got going and they're doing okay, so there's no need to actually put them in seed compost now. They're getting a little bit more hardy, so they can go straight into here. So these are the cauliflower, these are the all year round cauliflower which I planted a few weeks ago, and literally with these modules, let's see if I can just zoom us in a little bit, shall I, so you can see what's going on. There we are, you can see what's going on rather than me, that would be good, wouldn't it? Literally with these little modules here, you just lift them up, press the bottom, and they come out like that. Look at that. One little cauliflower all ready to get growing on. You can see it's ready for growing on because there's some nice roots just dangling off the bottom here. So I'm literally just going to make a nice hole in a pot like this, drop him in like that, and grow that on for a few weeks, because whilst they are quite tough plants, it's quite handy to have them nice and strong before they get outside, because they are a bit vulnerable to things like slugs, and it'd be quite nice for them to be nice and strong before they, get out there. How do you know when it's time to pot things on? Well, if you look at the bottom of a seed tray, you can see roots beginning to creep through the pot, and that means that it's time to get things moved on to something a little bit bigger. So all I'm going to do is just keep dropping those in there like that. I'll do the rest of those in a bit. So we've got plenty of cauliflowers here. I've got one here which I'm not going to pot on, because you can just see that the plant's a bit weak compared with some of the others. So that one, I'm afraid, well, compost heap, all the rest of the garden. This one here looks a lovely strong plant. There we are, it's got the one with the stick, so I can just drop in there, like that. Not forgetting though, it's very easy to do this, let's just zoom back out a little bit. It's very easy to do this, to lose track of what's actually what. So I need to get some more labels. So I've written out a few more labels for these, because once you get in individual pots, it's worth making sure that you keep track of what's what. So these are the cauliflower all year round, and I actually want the strongest 5 plants, because there's only so much cauliflower you can eat in one go, isn't there? So we'll take these ones here and stick the rest in the compost bin, and that's why you sow a few extras, just to keep the stock going. And so that's the cauliflowers done. So those will just need watered, and I'll probably just sit them in the bottom of the greenhouse a bit and let them grow on for maybe 2 or 3 weeks before those can go straight outside. Kale, I was growing some kale as well, Kale Reflex. This was put out, grown at the same time as the cauliflowers, and you can see lovely root system right down the bottom here, perfect for growing on. So again, I've just got some ordinary potting compost and just dropping it straight in here, so they don't need to be in seed compost now. Ordinary compost, drop it in, grow it on. So let's just quickly grab a few more of those. Actually, you might be able to see there's a cage over there to my left, or the rabbits run, and you'd be surprised how much of this kale ends up inside the rabbit. Rather nuts, but that's okay. Keeps them happy, keeps the kids happy. There we are, let's just put that one in there. One more kale plant. And we're done. There we are. So let's get some labels for those before I forget. Kale, reflex, cunningly written earlier. Don't want to bore you with showing that I can handwrite things, do I? And yeah, that's it. Good. All right, so that's the brassicas moved on for a little bit. The other things that are in here are some lettuce. I think you can just see here. I'm going to let those grow on for a little bit, and they can go straight in the outside ground. And some parsley here. Again, you know, that can go straight out once it's a little bit bigger, so that's fine. These ones here are spares, so yeah, I'm afraid, you know, if I had an allotment, I'd share these around with everybody else, but I don't at the moment. I just grow in the garden, so those can just stay there. Next up, let's talk beans, French beans. And they can be a little tricky to get going. They've got a tendency for the seeds to rot off in the pot, and so I always like to make sure that it's a little bit warmer before actually planting these up. And look at the forecast, because it's going to be so brilliant, it's perfect time for it. So these are the little dwarf beans I talked about last week, the dwarf beans Ferrari, and they are fantastic little plants. If you grow sort of 5 or 6 of these at a time, you'll get a tremendous supply. So I'll plant, you know, 5 or 6 plants now, and then 5 or 6 plants in a month, and you'll get a steady supply of beans just like this for the whole summer, which is brilliant. I found they don't freeze very well, these, so it's best to eat these during the season, and if you're growing runner beans, freeze those. So plant the seeds on their side. You can see there's very definitely a little button on the top of them, so you can see those sort of kidney shaped beans. Make sure that they are, that's not upside down, but I just plant them just on their side a little bit and just push them just below the surface of the soil like that. Oops, I'm always throwing seeds on the floor, aren't I, in these videos? Just inspect the beans, make sure that you've got some that aren't cracked and they're not sort of injured in any way before you put them in, because the seeds can be a little bit fragile. And with luck, these will germinate in probably about 2 weeks, I'd expect. But they won't stand the frost, so they do need to be grown on inside. I'm just using John Innes seed compost for these, because they're quite to say, they do have this tendency to go mouldy, so it's worth making sure that they are in free draining seed compost rather than being in ordinary potting compost, which will tend to let them rot off, and you know, that's a great shame. You're wasting your effort then. The second type of beans, slightly bigger pot. It's good, isn't it? It's like Blue Peter having all these things ready. Are these old French bean Algarve, and these grow 6 or 7 foot tall. So these are a bit like runner beans really, but they're quite prolific. There we are, I've got a label for those as well. Again, they won't really stand the frost. You can see they're slightly bigger beans than the other ones. So they do need to get growing in pots first. And again, I'm just going to pop them on their sides and just push them with my finger just below the surface. So I'll just put one in each spot. And once these are grown on, they'll grow up against some canes. And what we're going to do next, once I've got these in here, is go and prepare the soil. Because these are hungrier for deep soil, because they're such big plants, deep, rich soil, than like a supermodel is for a camera. They absolutely need to be well fed, otherwise they're just not going to grow well. And it's worth just throwing out some, you know, there's a few damaged beans here which are a bit cracked, so just lose those somewhere. I'm sure the mice will eat them, or something will eat them. And just choose the best seeds, because you know, it's quite a bit of effort here. So that one's okay, just need one more. Again, these, if I plant a few of these now, I can always plant a few later on in the season. But my plan is that we eat all the French beans during the summer, and then in about 3 weeks' time, I'll plant some Scarlet Emperor runner beans, and those freeze really well, so those can go in the freezer. So I'm just going to dust those over with the soil like that. And again, these can just sit in the greenhouse. Just make sure that they're away from anywhere that slugs can get them, and make sure they're away from the frost. And with luck, in a few weeks' time, I'll have something to show you. Right, let's go and sort out the soil. those French bean algarve I mentioned that grow sort of 6-8 foot tall, really hungry, the ones that really get their roots into the ground and need well fed, I'm going to grow in a teepee, a little round circle. And the reason I'm doing that is it's easy to grow straight rows, but inevitably what happens, particularly with a garden like this where the sun's rising over here and setting over here, east-west, is that one side crops better than the other because it gets more sun than the other. So what I prefer to do is grow it in a circle, and it tends to just even out that light distribution a bit better, and things will well, you know, you end up with a bit more on your plate, which I think is what we all want, isn't it? But because they're so hungry, I've dug a spade step down like this, and now I'm going to empty or make sure that there's plenty of food in the bottom. Now, they like honey. See, I'm very brave, no need to dress up. Beekeeping. Ready? Ready? Am I going to take the risk? Just joking, compost heap. So what I'm going to do is empty the bottom of the compost heap into this here, and that will hopefully give them plenty to go at. So whilst I do that, I'm just going to take the microphone off because it's a bit of a stretch on the wire. What do you reckon? If you were a French bean, would you fancy moving into that wigwam? I reckon it looks pretty good. Nice and tightly tied at the top, so and the sticks are well pushed into the soil. Very important because obviously you get a strong wind. Once those beans are up there, they'll easily get blown over. And yeah, they'll just give that soil a bit of time to settle whilst those beans get sprouted, and we'll be planting them out. I'll probably leave it another sort of 5 or 6 weeks, make sure there's no chance of frost, and see how they go. Now let's crack on with those strawberries. Strawberries. I found strawberries are one of those plants that have either grown brilliantly for me or proved to be trickier than persuading a small child to eat broccoli. They like deep, rich soil. They like soil that doesn't get too dry, but equally is well drained. They love sunshine. So they're quite picky, and the plants themselves only really fruit well for 3 or 4 years. So these are year-old plants I've just bought from the garden centre to replace some which had got too old. The variety is Symphony. Let me just zoom in a little bit so you can see them a little bit better. Here we are. I'm getting the hang of this tech a bit better now, aren't I? It's good, isn't it? He says as it fails miserably to do what he commands. Let's try that. Come on. There we are, good. So the variety here is Symphony, which is a sort of mid-season variety, and grows, well, let's see what it says on here. It says, bright, extremely glossy, regular-shaped fruit, a vigorous, free-running variety showing good resistance to disease. So it's a good choice. I grew it last year and used it for the lollies we had to make for Thane to suck down at Big Lockman Challenge, which she did so amusingly well. So I've decided to grow some of these at home. The soil, as I say, I've dug it well. There was a few weeds in it still. I've put some of the compost from the compost heap on it, and I'm just going to sprinkle it with chicken pellet manure as well, just to give these plants a really good start. So I'm just going to throw a bit of that over there and just give the soil, a quick rake over. It doesn't have to be super smooth for strawberries. They'll be fine once they're in. One of the things you might choose to do is grow them through some weed suppressant matting. Just put some matting over it and then just plant the plants through little slits in it. I've done that before, that works very well. I'm not going to do that this time. I'm literally just going to take each plant, turn it upside down, just tap the bottom, they'll drop out. Nice plants, nice root system here. Just loosen that slightly so they've got a better chance of getting into the soil. and then just dig a hole that's about twice the size of the pot and drop it in like that. And just before I fill it in, I'm just going to give it a bit of water as well. There we are. Make sure it's got a good soak to get its root in. Make sure you can see that okay. Where's my spade gone? How can I lose a spade so quickly? Just drop that in like that. And that's pretty much all there is to it. Now, I wouldn't expect that much fruit off these strawberries this year. What I would expect is that they'll fruit really well next year, and that this year they'll produce quite a few what are called runners, which is long stalks that come from the plants with new little baby plants on. So whilst I bought 5 plants, five or six plants here, I should be able to propagate lots more new plants for next year and save myself quite a bit of money. So you see, I'm putting about 30 centimetres between the plants here. So now let's just get this next one. I didn't water that one, did I? Naughty me. Soil's quite damp, thankfully. Just loosen that one off a bit and pop it in here. So I wouldn't expect a bumper crop this year, but as I say, they're all in and ready for next year, when I'll be strolling down the garden, helping myself to handfuls of strawberries and then denying to the rest of the family that they're producing any. So let's just pop that one in there. I'll give these a big good water in a moment. And last one. Just loosen that off again. And let's pop that one in there. Okay, so those are in. Just give them a bit of water. And just whilst they get their roots into the ground, I'm going to make sure they don't dry out, so I'm going to water them regularly. And when they do start flowering, when they start fruiting, that's where they get the name for strawberries, because they're going to need some straw underneath to keep the fruit off the ground, because the slugs will get the fruit. So just need some straw underneath here just to lift it up, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay, last thing this week is to get those cucumbers, those butternut squash, the courgettes going. So we'll retreat to the shed. Now, courgettes. Courgettes are one of those plants where you can really annoy your neighbours because they grow so prolifically once you've got them started. So I'm only going to grow 2 plants of each variety, otherwise I'm just going to end up with an inundation. In fact, if you look on my Instagram account, or you look on the blog itself, you should be able to find a picture I took last year at Big Allotment Challenge where I spelt carnations using courgettes and squash and cucumbers, because they just go ballistic. But getting them started can be a little bit tricky because they do like the warmth. So I've got a few varieties here. This one's a bush type courgette called Tosca F1, handy label written here. So I'm going to grow two plants of each. So 2 plants of each. So I'm going to put one in there, and the seeds. Let's just have a little look at the seeds here. They're very much like the sort of seeds you get out of a pumpkin, same family, when you're digging them out on Halloween. So the seeds are quite sort of fat little things, and I'm going to grow them on their side. So I'm literally just going to pop, let's just get a pot here. And it's seed compost, just ordinary seed compost again. I'm going to grow them in individual pots rather than trays, because it's just less root disturbance, and I can just let them grow on these pots until the risk of frost is gone before they pop outside, because they do like the sunshine. If you look under where you're getting courgettes from in the winter, they're always from somewhere nice and warm. So yeah, just going to get the seed, pop it on the top like that, and just push it just below the surface. It's important not to get the compost too wet for these, because the seeds do have a tendency to rot off. So keep an eye, and if there's nothing coming up after a couple of weeks, it might be worth starting another pot. So yeah, that's the Tosca. Exactly the same for the Aurelia, which I'll do in a moment. I'll do that, there's no point in boring you with that. And I'm going to grow some summer squash, which are the sort of scallop mix these are, and they grow really well, and they look a bit like sort of little spaceships, little white spaceships. Very nice for roasting, actually. You can roast it on a barbecue, which is quite a nice thing to do in the summer. So exactly the same as the courgettes. In fact, in terms of growing, look, you can see the seeds are very, very similar. Just a little bit rounder, these ones. So I'm going to try and pick a couple of fattish seeds and just drop those in the top of the pot like that. And I'll push those in. Here we are. Let's see if I can manage to get these back in here without spilling them on the floor this week. Look at that. I'm getting better. Practice. Butternut squash. Great crop to grow in the garden. It grows brilliantly. And they keep really well. So you can get these things going, pick them all in, you know, September, late September time, and store them in somewhere that's free of frost, and they'll keep until probably Christmas time, which is sort of quite a nice thing really, because it's a sort of low effort thing to store. Don't get many seeds left here. The variety I'm growing here of butternut squash is Avalon. You can hear Roxy Music and Brian Ferry already. So again, just popping them on the surface there, sideways on like that, just pushing them in, just below the surface. Very easy. So just pop those away. And finally, cucumbers. I didn't do very well, did I, last year, growing cucumbers, big allotment challenge. That's because the plants had literally only just started producing. 2 weeks later, there were loads of them. So, you know, there it is. But again, cucumbers can be really prolific plants once they get going. And so it's sort of worth just getting them moving now to make sure you've got a couple of plants going. If they don't get going, then you can always go back, plant a couple more, because you're only going to need 2 or 3 plants for cucumbers. I guarantee it. It's an outdoor variety, this particular variety, Market More, so you don't have to worry about having a greenhouse. You can just grow it outside in the garden. It will grow beautifully. I tend to use Dobie's seeds, by the way. They're not sponsoring me in any way, but they, you know, they're maybe not quite the cheapest, but they are great. Their seeds always seem to do well for me. So these are very similar to the other seeds, just a little bit smaller. So I'm just going to take one of those and pop it in each pot like that. And we'll see how we go. Do you know what? I think I might do, I've got a spare pot here, so I might do another pot, another one of cucumbers, just to be sure that we get what we want. Let's just choose a decent seed. That's going to be a cucumber as well. Right, that's pretty much it for this week. Lots of things planted, lots of things sown. Next week we're going to be going back to tomatoes, because the tomatoes are getting to the stage that they're ready for potting on. So we'll get those potted on, and then whip through the seed boxes, see what else needs to get going. But we're getting to that stage now, thankfully, where most things are in seed trays that I'm planning to grow this year. It's always busy in March and April getting things going, but then come July you're able to just relax, enjoy it and go and harvest it. That's great, isn't it? So look, have a great week gardening. As ever, thanks ever so much for watching, and I'm really appreciating all your positive comments. If you've got anything else that you think I should be focusing on, do send me a note. If there's anything else you really would like to see me grow, again, send me a note. Let's do it.